म अघि भर्खर वक गएको थिएँ क्या दाइ। अब नेपालमा त देयर इजन्ट अ लट अफ पब्लिक स्पेसेस टु गो फर अ वक अर लाइक जस्ट चिल। अनि यहाँ शङ्खमुलमा चाहिँ देयर इज शङ्ख पार्क बनाएर रहेछ क्या। सो आई वेन्ट देयर, अनि त्यहाँ गएर चाहिँ मैले कस्तो द इम्पोर्टेन्स अफ पब्लिक स्पेसेस इज सो नेसेसरी के। अब हामीले चाहिँ पब्लिक स्पेसको नाममा देयर आर अ फ्यु होइन। अब जस्तै पाटन दरबार स्क्वायरहरूतिर गयो भने दिउँसो यु फाइन्ड अ लट अफ पिपल जस्ट सिटिङ चिलिङ, दिउँसो भन्दा पनि बेलुका होइन। आई थिङ्क पशुपति एट सम पोइन्ट इज काइन्ड अफ सर्भड एज समथिङ सिमिलर होइन। आई थिङ्क त्यही भएर पनि आरती यस्तो उस्तो हुँदाखेरि यु सी डिभोटिज बट यु अल्सो सी अ लट अफ पिपल जस्ट लाइक गोइङ देयर हुन्छ नि, बस्नलाई मात्रै भए पनि। तर मलाई यो उसमा चाहिँ द पार्क देव मेड इज एन अटेम्प्ट, इट्स अ स्टार्ट जस्तो लाग्छ। तर दे सुड बी मोर स्पेसेस लाइक द्याट भनेर चाहिँ ठ्याक्क थाहा हुने क्या त्यो जाने बित्तिकै।
त्यही त नेपालमा चाहिँ रिलिजियस एङ्गल भयो भने चाहिँ इट्स इजी टु प्रोटेक्ट होइन, नत्र अरू स्पेसमा चाहिँ सकेसम्म छिटो त्यहाँ बिल्डिङ खडा कसरी हुन्छ भनेर द्याट सोर्ट अफ लाइक अ प्रोसेस कि खाली जग्गा देखेँ कि यहाँ चाहिँ बिल्डिङ बन्छ छिटो टाइपको भइसकेको हुन्छ। And that goes down to that's why you end up going to restaurants to meet people all the time because free public spaces हरुको कमी नै छ नि त अलिकति।
तर मैले चाहिँ लाइक लन्डनमा बस्दाखेरि चाहिँ यो कुरा चाहिँ एकदम नोटिस गरेको यार। लन्डनको पार्क्सहरू त सम अफ द बेस्ट पार्क्स एन्ड एभ्री प्लेस लाइक एभ्री बरो हेज देयर ओन पार्क एन्ड इट्स सो नाइस। अनि त्यहाँको त बेस्ट पास टाइमै ड्युरिङ समर, just like get stuff from the grocery store, whatever, and then go to the park and just chill. Okay, it's the best thing to do. Yeah, I wish there were like more spaces like that. But
I think the biggest stride they made in that direction was they redid the usko park ni Naxalko park. They redid the whole thing ni Narenchor.
Oh yes.
Yeah, I think that's one example. That's probably a case study they can work with because म त्यहाँ नजिकै काम गर्थेँ नि त बिहान, अनि on the drive to work I'd always notice that people were jogging and यस्तो ग्रुपमा योगा सेगा गरेर आएको होइन। That should serve as a case study that if you actually make a nice public space, people will start using it and there's value to it भनेर चाहिँ। But we should be seeing more of that if we consider that a case study. But let's see if there's any progress in that direction. All right, should we start?
Let's do it. Namaste and welcome to the 8th episode of Kura. Himal, let us start off with the same old topic we always do almost.
Yes, and I think it's becoming more serious of a problem because we've spoken about Balen issues in sort of handling sensitive topics or sensitive issues. About last time we talked about the problem he's had with street vendors. अनि त्यसपछि त्यहाँ पनि एउटा किसिमको arrogance देखिरहेको थियो नि त हैन। अनि एउटा प्रब्लम चाहिँ के भने अहिले भर्खर रिसेन्टली भएको इन्सिडेन्ट हो यो चाहिँ। सो शनिबारको दिनमा चाहिँ हिज अफिसियल भेहिकल वाज स्टप्ड। नियम नेपालमा छ के भने चाहिँ अब धेरै हाई अपलाई चाहिँ लागू हुँदैन कि के हो खै थाहा छैन होइन, तर नियम चाहिँ छ द्याट शनिबार चाहिँ अथवा सार्वजनिक बिदामा चाहिँ सरकारी गाडी लिएर हिँड्न पाइँदैन। लिएर हिँड्ने हो भने स्पेसल पास चाहिन्छ अनि ट्राफिकले रोकेर चेक गर्न पाउँछ। त्यो प्रोसिजरली नै मिसयुज नहोस् भेहिकल्स भनेर हो। अनि त्यसपछि चाहिँ शनिबारै हो आई थिङ्क, हिजोकै त कुरा हो नि शनिबार, रेकर्डिङ दिस अन अ सन्डे। सो स्याटरडे चाहिँ हिज भेहिकल वाज स्टप्ड, हिज वाइफ वाज इन द भेहिकल। अनि त्यसपछि बेस्ड अन द न्युज विच देयर इज नो रिजन टु डिसएग्री बिकज कुनै साइडबाट पनि रेफ्युटेसन आएको छैन, द भेहिकल वाज स्टप्ड एन्ड क्वेसन्स वर आस्क्ड किन के युजमा छ गाडी, सरकारी गाडी शनिबारको दिन भनेर ट्राफिकले रोकेर सोधपुछ गराएर रहेछ। अनि सोधपुछ गरिसकेपछि कारवाही पनि केही भएको छैन भनेको छ। यहाँ आर्टिकल्सहरूमा भनेअनुसार चाहिँ सामान्य सोधपुछ गरेर छोड्या हो भनेर भनेको छ। के भयो रहेछ भने बालेन द मेयर अफ काठमाडौँ, हिज वाइफ वाज इन द भेहिकल विच इज अगेन अ भायोलेसन अफ आई थिङ्क वाट सुड बी द प्रपर वे टु युज एन अफिसियल भेहिकल। बट देन वी क्यान अब जेनरली त्यो कुरा चाहिँ नेपालमा त्यति फलो भएको पाइँदैन पनि, धेरै नै मिसयुज भइरहेछ। सो इभन इफ वी पुट द्याट असाइड फर नाउ त्यो भनेर छोड्या रहेछ। The problem was when Balen posted a status on Facebook mentioning कि हिजो जे भयो ठिकै छ अबदेखि नगरपालिका गाडी रोक्यो भने सिंहदरबारमा आगो लगाइदिन्छु भन्ने this is almost verbatim. That's what he wrote on Facebook, होइन? Now that's where the problem is. That shows the level of arrogance that he's built up over time, and I don't think there is a way out, होइन? And some people have been coming off to his defense because he recently had a child, अनि त्यसपछि यो चाहिँ validated sources सेतोपाटीमा भएको अनुसार चाहिँ they say that they've checked with the hospital and all of that कि बच्चा जन्मेको चाहिँ धेरै दिन भइसकेको छ. The mother was already discharged several days ago. The child is in need of regular medical attention. So the child is in the neonatal ICU apparently. So the story is that the wife of the mayor was coming back from the hospital Medicity बाट घर फर्किने बेला चाहिँ यो रोक्या भन्ने छ. At best this is a minor inconvenience in that sense, होइन? And you are reacting in a way that you shouldn't be inconvenienced at all, होइन? अनि his whole argument is नगरपालिका गाडी 24 घण्टा ड्युटीमा हुन्छ. हुँदैन 24 घण्टा ड्युटीमा. Nobody expects you to work 24/7. You don't work 24/7 either. Let's be honest. Plus नगरपालिकाको युजमा पनि थिएन गाडी, होइन? That's one of the defenses that has come up. नगरपालिका गाडी 24 घण्टा ड्युटीमा हुन्छ, यसरी रोक्न पाइँदैन भन्ने खालको कुरा भएको छ. त्यो गाडी ड्युटीमा थिएन. It was transporting the wife of the elected official, होइन? So I don't see why. I don't see the reason behind the anger, and I don't see why you should get away with this either. This is threatening violence on the seat of power for no reason, for personal vendetta, right?
Well, again, like this is a logical opinion. The law is logical because obviously if it's an official car, it's only used like during official hours.
Exactly.
Official काम को लागि मात्र. शनिबार use नगर्ने makes sense because obviously शनिबार is a holiday. You're not supposed to work. And then it's specifically like official cars are not supposed to be used for personal use, होइन? Which in this case अब यस्तो त्यो हेऱ्यो भने पनि अब seems like it. तर अब that being aside, अब बुझे पनि होइन, त्यो खालको status चाहिँ I think we saw this arrogance coming from a long time because we've been talking about him, and यस्तै कुराहरू हामीले hint गरिराखेकै थियो कि पहिलेदेखि नै. The actions were smaller त नभनौँ, तर जे होस् मान्छेहरूले चाहिँ यस्तो खाले arrogance चाहिन्छ to make a change खाले एङ्गलले चाहिँ हेरिरहेको थियो for the longest period of time. But I think the kind of things that we were discussing is yes, change, but then like the style चाहिँ यो arrogant भयो है भनेर चाहिँ I think we were like kind of कुरा गर्दै थियो. And now चाहिँ it's kind of come to a point where normal people, like the everyday supporters of Balen, are also, I think, after this are starting to question. Okay? Because I feel like at this point, the status or porno on it really feels like he looks at himself like he's the main character in a movie, and he's like the hero who's sure to save everyone, kind of. And he's going up against like a bigger villain, and the bigger villain in this picture is always the Chor government or Chor Sarkar. I think he's also mentioned like Chor Sarkar in the status itself.
No, he's gone on a rampage against the court. He's gone on a rampage against the government and all of that. He has the right to do so as long as it's within the confines of the law and for the purposes of his job. होइन? अब जस्तै केही नगरपालिकाको अथवा नगरपालिकामा बस्ने मान्छेको हितमा केही काम गर्न खोज्दाखेरि चाहिँ अरू कुनै सरकारी एन्टिटीले त्यो कुरालाई प्रब्लम क्रिएट गरिरहेछ, गर्न दिइरहेको छैन भने त्यो केसेसमा टु स्पिक आउट इज अ डिफरेन्ट थिङ, होइन? तर हिज वाइफ बिङ स्टप्ड इज नट अ पब्लिक इस्यु, होइन? Sure, you have this leeway. I think everybody will say that or using the car is something that can be overlooked in emergency circumstances. Maybe that was the vehicle available. Maybe there was a medical emergency that she had to go and see the child. All of those are understandable circumstances that can be forgiven. This is not. Because the police officer who probably stopped him had every right to do so. And
he was just doing his job.
The person was doing their job. So you can't go on a rampage against the government. Ani main issue chahi, the whole reason behind people having problems with past governments and people in the past is accountability नहुनु हैन issues different होला हैन misuse of vehicle को सट्टा misuse of large scale funds थियो होला जे कुरा थियो मैले जे गर्दा पनि हुन्छ यसले गर्दा मलाई केही consequences हुँदैन right from the royal palace हैन the princes acting on their whims or sons of politicians acting on their whims or the politicians acting on their whims. These are things people have had fundamental issues with. Ani, one of the reasons they're looking to the alternative political movement is to get away from all of this. And at this day, at least I am convinced that he is no better in that sense. He just didn't have the power to act that way before. Over time, he's built up the power and he's built up the public support where he feels confident enough कि मेरो पछाडि there are enough people that nobody can touch me if I do this भन्ने खालको confidence आएकै त देखियो, and that makes him no different from Prachanda for that matter in that regard. हैन selectively राम्रो काम त धेरैजनाले गरेका छन्, like even the worst of some of the leaders that we talk about, if you go look for positives in their career, several of them have some positive records. यो काम चाहिँ राम्रो गरेको थियो, यो काम चाहिँ राम्रो गरेको थियो, but then that doesn't give them a free pass to do everything else that they've done. And I don't think Balen should get a free pass for this either, because this is obnoxious. He's basically somebody these are fascist tendencies. Okay? You're basically saying I am better than everybody else. Nobody should get in my way. People are, of course, supposed to get in your way. You're an elected official in a democratic system. You're answerable to everybody else. And I think somebody pointed out the contradiction that you're threatening to burn down the seat of the government because your wife was stopped for 3 or 4 minutes. But then you have no moral qualms in like robbing people of their livelihoods by taking away all they have to make money and feed their children. How are you even able to hold those two thoughts in your head at the same time and be comfortable with yourself?
Exactly. On one hand, he acts like he is this underdog who's going against the entire government and the entire system. And on the other hand, he acts as this oppressor who is cleaning up the entire city and getting rid of all of the so-called, whatever, like poor people or like the street vendors, cleaning up the city in one sense. Okay? So I don't know how he thinks about like where he falls under this. But these are fascist tendencies. I agree with that. The idea of I am the right person and everybody should get behind me and like मैले भनेको चाहिँ सबै कुरा right and everybody else is wrong खाले. But isn't there any law where like you can't like I don't know speak against तर हैन, I don't think so.
No, speaking against this is threatening violence. This is something else.
Exactly. You're like this is absurd for an elected like official who knows like he's popular, who knows that this is going to be read, who knows that this is going to make news, to say something like I will burn down the Singha Darbar types.
Exactly, and that this is inciting violence to me. This is you can't threaten violence to anybody. I can't just like on your face tell you today that I'm gonna come and burn down your house. Why? It's the same thing. You can't threaten anybody with arson, including the government. It's not allowed. It's just not allowed.
I think अहिले त भर्खर एक दिन मात्र भएको छ. I feel like यसमा चाहिँ people have been kind of divided. तपाईले कमेन्ट्सहरु पढ्नु भयो भने पनि it's like मान्छेहरु people are kind of like eyebrows have been raised. People are like अब चाहिँ अलिकति यसो हेरिरहेको छ. So we'll just have to see. अब आज भर्खर day 1 भएको छ. अब नेपालीहरु मोस्टली 2-3 दिनपछि बिर्सिन्छ पनि होला. तर let's see where this pans out.
अर्को चाहिँ एउटा मिसइन्फर्मेसनको पनि देखिया छ कि that's what's more depressing, because the reason why Setopati came out with all these details, and we've linked that article that Setopati did on when the child was born and all of that, it didn't come out of nowhere. They didn't just show interest in his personal life, but what they put out was that the baby was recently born. हिजै बच्चा जन्म्या हो, to make it more make the whole thing or turn the whole thing towards a story which would be more empathetic towards the couple. And that was what was making rounds on social media. That's why Setopati did this investigation. अनि रुटिन अफ नेपाल भन्द which has been alleged to have very close connections with the mayor, alleged होइन, I think this is pretty well founded right now, that there's this constant stream of support. They came out and said बच्चा हिजो भर्खर जन्मायो online something along those lines. So you're basically using your position of power and influence to threaten the government for something that's a minor inconvenience, and you're using your connections in the media to peddle misinformation to get out of a jam. You're not better than anybody at this point of time.
You have to be held accountable like everyone else.
Exactly.
And
so
that is, accountability is all we're asking for.
Exactly. And speaking of accountability, let's move on to the second thing, because it's not just Balen that's creating a problem in the system. We do have problems in the bigger sense of the political parties. So I picked up two pieces of news from a reform angle. दुईटा कुरा रहेछ. एउटा चाहिँ कर्मचारीहरूको कुरा, बिकज कर्मचारीहरू पनि पोलिटिकली एफिलिएटेड भएर प्रमोसनदेखि लिएर पोजिसन अफ पावरमा बस्ने कुराहरू चाहिँ पोलिटिकल इन्फ्लुएन्सले चल्यो भनेर चाहिँ there was this initiative, अनि त्यसपछि there was a policy proposal even, I think, that पार्टीगत कर्मचारी युनियन चाहिँ हुनु हुँदैन भनेर एउटा प्रपोजल धेरै टाइमदेखि फ्लोट भइरहेछ. अनि सेभरल पार्टिज इन्क्लुडिङ राप्रपा अनि त्यसपछि स्वतन्त्र पार्टी, they've all come up and said that हामी चाहिँ हाम्रो पार्टीसँग एफिलिएटेड ट्रेड युनियनहरू चाहिँ खोल्न दिँदैनौँ, वी आर नट इन्ट्रेस्टेड इन डुइङ द्याट भनेर पनि भनेको छ. बिकज क्लियरली द्याट्स अ प्रब्लम, जसले गर्दा अननेसेसरी ठाउँमा पोलिटिसाइजेसन भइरहेछ, त्यसले गर्दा पब्लिकलाई हार्म भइरहेछ. सो वान अफ द प्रपोजल्स वाज अलङ दोज लाइन्स. अनि अर्को चाहिँ एजुकेसन सेक्टरमा पनि, जस्तै सरकारी स्कुलहरूमा पढाउने टिचरहरू पनि पोलिटिकल युनियनसँग, पोलिटिकल पार्टीसँग एफिलिएटेड युनियन्सहरू खोलेर त्यसमा एङ्गेज भएर चाहिँ पर्फर्मेन्स इन्सेन्टिभ्सहरू छैन, पोलिटिकल प्रोटेक्सनको कारणले गर्दा पिपल आर किपिङ देयर जब्स, अनि त्यसपछि ओभरली पोलिटिसाइज भइरहेछ, अकाउन्टेबिलिटी भएन भनेर यो रिफर्मको कुरा चाहिँ भइरहेछ. बट देन बोथ अफ दोज थिङ्स आर पुट अन होल्ड होइन. अनि वी हेभ टु आर्टिकल्स, वान फर द एम्प्लोइ युनियनको साइड एन्ड वान फ्रम द एजुकेसनल पोलिसीको साइड. अनि एजुकेसन पोलिसीमा अर्को एडिसनल एङ्गल पनि छ अबाउट स्पेसल इन्ट्रेस्ट ग्रुप्स लाइक ओनर्स अफ प्राइभेट इन्स्टिट्युसन्स एन्ड अल अफ द्याट, एन्ड द्याट्स सोर्ट अफ द स्टोरी होइन. सो it's coming back to हामीले अघि भर्खरै मेन्सन गरेको कुरा, where political parties are trying to create a system where you can get away from accountability based on your political connections, and that's destructive.
मलाई यो द पार्टी मेम्बरसिपको त्यो होल आइडिया नै सिम्स सो रङ के, बिकज आई थिङ्क लाइक द बिगर पार्टिज यु सी लाइक जहाँ पनि अब अहिले त आई थिङ्क स्टुडेन्ट युनियन्सहरू बिन अलिकति अलि हस
Not really. They've also been protesting things. अहिले पुल्चोक क्याम्पसको फिजहरू बढाएर to keep in line with the costs, and they've been protesting that. I mean, sure, there's a side to that issue which has validity. So this is not the worst they've done.
But again, like the whole idea about like party memberships and like party membership, and again like the union memberships, like directly with the parties and everything, it kind of creates an incentive because you're directly tied to whichever party comes to power. That's going to directly affect your life and how you get in your positions within the. So no matter what the party does, नराम्रो गरे भने पनि you don't want to say anything bad. Like you're like त्यो एकदमै like religiously you follow, and religiously even not just you but your family, everyone who's related to you. So you have direct incentive to like हुन्छ नि support the party no matter what goes down. के उसले राम्रो गरे पनि नराम्रो गरे पनि whatever happens, you have this innate like हुन्छ नि त्यो support गर्नै पर्ने, and then you're always like against the other party because you have to kind of and this just is so flawed, because now rather than you becoming a competent individual, being good at your job, त्यो भन्दा पनि your whole idea for promotion or whatever becomes how do you support the party, how do you lick more asses to something similar भनौँ न, excuse my language, but then no, that's fair. So basically, like you said, if you've got political masters that can influence your progress so much more, then you're accountable to your political masters than you are to your students as a faculty member or to the public as a public servant, होइन. अनि त्यो हुने बित्तिकै त इन्सेन्टिभ्सहरू मिसम्याच भइहाल्छ.
होइन.
Exactly.
त्यो हुने बित्तिकै प्रब्लम्स क्रिएट हुन थाल्ने हो होइन. वी बेसिकली निड एन इन्सेन्टिभ बेस्ड सिस्टम वेयर डुइङ द जब बेटर इज the only benchmark required for you to succeed, and that's clearly not the case होइन. अनि until you put that in place हुँदैन. अनि त्यसलाई चाहिँ इन्टर्नली नै रेजिस्ट गरिरहेको छ होइन. अब त्यसमा चाहिँ सबभन्दा अचम्म लाग्ने कुरा चाहिँ यो पोलिटिकल युनियन यताउतिको कुरा चाहिँ एजुकेसनल रिफर्मको आर्टिकलमा मेन्सन पनि गरेको छ द्याट शिक्षक सङ्गठनहरूले विरोध गरिरहेछन् यो कुराको भनेर होइन. शिक्षक सङ्गठन भनेकै पोलिटिकल पार्टिजहरूको विङ हो. Why would they protest this if the political parties really want to put this reform forward and the teachers are disagreeing? One narrative, that's just something I don't buy it. I just don't buy it. If the parties are not of the same opinion, this just wouldn't work.
So do you think the parties are on paper they're trying to sound progressive and everything, but then obviously internally this is obviously benefiting them?
I mean, that's their power base, right? So I don't think they're willing to let go themselves. So maybe top leadership is trying to come out and sort of talk about this as if they support it, but then within the party system they're probably giving people assurances that we'll keep it as it is because it works for everybody. There's also financial incentives linked to them, Nita, to a certain extent. This is just unwillingness, the way I see it होइन. एउटा त त्यो कर्मचारी युनियनको कुरामा as far as I remember नेपाली काङ्ग्रेस was against it the most भनेको छ होइन. Why? So some parties are obviously stronger on some domains होइन, and then they're just pushing political dominance whichever way they can. अनि यो त्यो unbiased bureaucracy भएन भने चाहिँ political problemsहरू झन् propagate हुँदै जान्छ. If the bureaucracy is balanced and they're doing their job with the right incentives, a strong bureaucracy can protect the public from too much political volatility होइन. किनभने त्यो bureaucratic system त execution को it's the backbone of executing everything नि त. अनि त्यो political masters keep changing, people have different interests होइन. So a strong unbiased bureaucracy will basically help protect that. It'll act as a barrier between the political fluctuations in government and the public that wants stability. They can sort of make it more difficult for them to do whatever they want. But if the bureaucracy is basically a puppet of the government, they start being even more volatile. Kinavane, they like to please their masters. So even before they come out and start saying we want you to do this and we want you to do that, you basically have all the incentives to sort of do whatever you think they're gonna like and just do it before they ask you for it, so that you can go and look nice to them होइन. अनि त्यसले गर्दा चाहिँ झन् प्रब्लम्स क्रिएट हुन्छ. सो इन अ वे दिस इज अल्सो समथिङ द्याट shouldn't be acceptable, but then they're sort of, I think यो चाहिँ सबै this is a big smoke screen के ट्राई गरिरहेछ भनेर पनि देखाइरहेछ अनि अर्कोतिरबाट पुश पनि गरिरहेछ होइन. So basically I don't think the parties yet have an appetite for the kind of reform we need, but the positive side is they're feeling the pressure to act like they need to do something about it. So if in some ways this might sort of be a sign that they'll eventually have to give in to new people coming in and new kind of leaders coming in. अनि नयाँ leadership बाट केही होप गर्न सकिन्छ कि भनेर, because I'm not seeing this as an indication that they want to change, but I'm at least seeing this as an indication that they feel the need to project that willingness to change होइन. अनि maybe there's something there.
So there is a pressure being felt. So at least public opinion मा पनि they have to seem kind of progressive in some ways हुन्छ नि. Like अहिले पनि I think the Congress parties उनीहरूले अलिकति नयाँ इभेन्ट्सहरू यताउतिहरू पनि गरेर पनि they're trying to seem more progressive.
पोलिसी ह्याकाथन गरेर छ भनेर देखाएको खै के
भइरहेको छ, जस अलिअलि यताउति गरिरहेको छ. तर that being said, like I was reading अलिअलि about like हुन्छ नि the history and everything. अब Nepal still is a very young democracy in the, and we still have like the same people भनौँ न डेमोक्रेसी भएकोदेखि अहिलेसम्म the same people who were in power are still in power हुन्छ नि. तर अहिले I think after this election चाहिँ seeing that pressure being felt for the first time in a long time हुन्छ नि, to at least act like they are trying to change भनेर चाहिँ. अनि मलाई त्यसले चाहिँ अलिअलि भए पनि होपफुल चाहिँ बनाउँछ. It's not like a very happy खाले उ चाहिँ होइन, तर hopeful in the sense that there is kind of pressure being felt and change will slowly have to come खाले चाहिँ लागिरहेको छ.
Exactly.
Okay. Moving on to our तेस्रो कुरा.
Yes. So यसमा चाहिँ this is something where it just reeks of corruption. It's just surprising that it has not been covered yet. होइन? So there's two stories of both stories are of pretty blatant misuse of authority or some sort of shady business going on. So the first story is something that the taxpayers are paying for indirectly. होइन? So the current head of Nepal Tourism Board is a scientist. Basically, he's got a doctorate in geology, as far as I remember. And त्यसपछि चाहिँ he's hosting a conference. It's a research conference based on his area of interest. होइन? And the tourism board is footing the bill for most of it as a primary sort of sponsor. होइन? And this is clearly a misappropriation of funds as far as I see it. किनभने there's no direct benefit to the tourism board. Nepal Tourism Board ko agenda should be more focused towards getting the message out to as many people as possible. Conferences are definitely a good idea, but then the board shouldn't be directly engaged in organizing conferences that the head of the board has direct interests in. होइन? Because एउटा cost benefit analysis देखाउन सक्नुपर्छ यस्तो कुराहरुमा. I'm not saying there are no conferences, like conferences are of no benefit. There might be certain conferences that might project the nation in a way where it attracts tourists, and that would be excellent. तर this clearly looks more personal than anything else. होइन? अनि that's the problem. That's the problem here.
Help me understand. So the conference is called Sustainable Mountain Development Conference. होइन? And then यसमा चाहिँ the major, like the main sponsor is the Nepal Tourism Board, alongside a lot of other education institutions, भनौँ न, the TU and other universities. So it's basically an academic, sustainable development, all of these things.
Yes.
So this isn't directly involved, but doesn't it seem, because it's like mountains and like sustainable development and all of these things?
Not really.
You can kind of somehow tie up, no?
Not really the way I see it, because you're a conflict of interest को कुरा हुन्छ हैन. अब you've got to treat everybody fairly if this is the benchmark, हैन? Boli, if somebody else wants to do a conference on development economics, is it Nepal Tourism Board's policy to sponsor those conferences as well? What is the benchmark? Is there a threshold for it? As far as we can see, Nepal Tourism Board it's not a sponsor of conferences. A conference brings in scientists from different places and all of that. It puts the country on a map to a certain extent, yes. But is this the policy for all conferences? Or is it because the head of Nepal Tourism Board is one of the conveners of the conference, and it has something to do with his probably recognition in the field? Is that the reason? Or is it because Nepal Tourism Board has now changed to a default policy of sponsoring all conferences? Sponsor गर्ने हो भने all sorts of conferences त्यही हिसाबले ल्याउनु पर्यो, हैन? Then there should be a process where different sort of academic professionals in Nepal can put in proposals for sponsorships, and based on the value in terms of tourism growth in the country, सबभन्दा धेरै जुन कन्फरेन्स छ त्यो कन्फरेन्सेसलाई रिवार्ड गर्नु पर्यो, हैन? So unrelated completely भने हैन, भ्याल्यु छैन भने हैन, but then the way this is being done, that's wrong.
The way this is being done is clearly personal interest ले चाहिँ त्यो ठ्याक्क इन्फ्लुएन्स भएको चाहिँ देखिन्छ. So that is where the problem comes into play.
Yeah, because I think the article that we've shared, it takes a slightly more negative sort of approach, in the sense of not entirely incorrect, but then it's sort of looking at it as a non-value creating event. Value create गर्दैन भन्न खोजे हैन मैले चाहिँ. I think, like you said, mountains connection नभए पनि, even if it's a conference that gets a couple hundred tourists coming into the country and looking around and promoting it, there might be value, but then what conferences to sponsor then? नेपालमा त थुप्रै conferences हुन्छ, थुप्रै कुरा organize भइरा हुन्छ, हैन? Priority कुन हो त? किनभने if your policy is to sponsor conferences, is this the best conference to sponsor? हैन? So there has to be due process in picking what to sponsor. If this is a policy, if the tourism board is not supposed to sponsor conferences, then this shouldn't be happening. त्यो क्ल्यारिटी चाहिँ चाहिन्छ यस्तो कुरामा भन्ने हो मेरो मेजर क्वाम चाहिँ.
And that's understandable.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do see the personal and the conflict. It seems like basically a personal interest. You're basically using taxpayers' money to fund this.
Yeah.
And let's say clearly shows that. And about the next article.
Yes, so this was surprising to me. Okay, so something that you have to appreciate is the kind of work Ukalo has been doing consistently, because they put out stories that nobody is picking up. I don't know why nobody else picks it up. It's obviously got so much importance to the way we look at our elected officials, political leaders and their activities. Nobody's keeping a watch. These are the only guys who are looking at these things. So they uncovered a business dealing between Sherbahadur Deoba's son and Botas Group. Botas Group has been in a lot of controversy for using political favors to gain contracts. And they've defended it. They've said, we don't do any of this. We are very clean. We bid, we win bids, we do our job. Why are you throwing us onto the bus? That was Botas Group ko retaliation, because Narayani ko Pitra Cafe ko case athyo ani Pashupati ko resort in Pashupati, basically. That's basically how you can put it. It was built as a dharmashala, but then it's being marketed as a resort. Philosophically, I have no problem with either way of interpreting it. Personally, malai problem chaina. It can be a resort. You can have a resort next to a temple because people go to Nepal for religious tourism. So that problem, ignoring that problem, the way in which these contracts were awarded was called into question. Now, like I said, Botas Group ko defense was, we don't engage in any of this. But then what they uncovered was about 5 rupiyaँ जति जग्गा चाहिँ शेरबहादुर देउबाको छोराको नाममा पास भएको छ. अनि the defense that Botas Group is coming with is हामीले चाहिँ उहाँहरूलाई फार्म हाउस खोल्न खेती गर्न हुन्छ भनेर किन्न एन्करेज गरे हो, त्यसरी बेचे हो भनेर भनेको छ हैन. The value of the property in the listing is 5,25,000 rupiयाँ or something like that for 5 rupiयाँ जग्गा. भनेको रोपनीको 1 लाख रुपियाँ. लोकल रेट्स अनुसार चाहिँ what they're suggesting is रोपनीको 1 करोड जति पर्छ अरे, अलिकति बाटो एक्सेस राम्रो भएको ठाउँमा. So not quite that expensive. It should be somewhere below that, but not nearly as low as 1 lakh rupiयाँ रोपनी is what the locals are saying based on this article. So this is clearly a business group shifting property to a political powerhouse. Why aren't we talking about this more? Why isn't this a headline in every newspaper when this is happening?
Isn't this a clear case of bribery?
Immediate, in a way, yes, it is. In a way, it is, because त्यो deal immediate kickback केही थियो कि थिएन थाहा छैन, but considering that there have been favors tendered towards this particular business group, it is courting favors, right? त्यो अब bribery लाई कसरी हेर्ने भन्ने कुरा पनि there's layers to it. जस्तै फर इक्जाम्पल US गभर्मेन्ट को पोलिसीमा चाहिँ के हुन्छ भने डिस्काउन्ट्स पनि लिन पाइँदैन धेरै भन्ने हुन्छ हैन. हाम्रोमा के छ लिगली मलाई ठ्याक्कै थाहा छैन.
गिफ्ट्स पनि यु कान्ट रियली गिभ लाइक हुन्छ नि,
गिफ्टको भ्याल्यु हुन्छ, डिस्काउन्ट्स पनि भ्याल्यु हुन्छ के. जस्तै म गाडी बेच्छु रे, त मेरोमा गाडी किन्न आइस् रे, त इलेक्टेड अफिसियल हो रे, मैले 10 लाखको गाडीमा मैले 6 लाख रुपियाँ डिस्काउन्ट दिँदै रे, फर इक्जाम्पल. युआर पेइङ मी फर द कार बट आइ एम गिभिङ यु अ डिस्काउन्ट विच क्लियरली डजन्ट मेक सेन्स हैन. टेक्निकली सस्तोमा जग्गा बेच्न पाइन्छ कि पाइँदैन, पाइन त पाइन्छ, नपाइन त कुरा के छ र हैन. मैले तँलाई यतिमा बेच्छु भने किन्न नपाउने के छ र. बट कन्सिडरिङ द ग्याप इन भ्याल्यु वेयर लाइक Botas is a successful business group, I am sure they are not taking on a loss of some. अब जस्तै 5 करोडको जग्गा 5 लाखमा बेचेर चान्चुन 4 करोडको घाटा खाएर बेच्ने त doesn't make any sense हैन. They've been doing quite well.
4 करोड 95 lakhs.
Even if we say okay जग्गाको भ्याल्यु कम छ भनेर, so त्यो any that missing figure, it has to come from somewhere, and where is it coming from? That's the question, right? So legally, where does this stand? I'm not entirely sure. It's logically हेर्दाखेरि त it is a case of bribery हैन. Legally हेर्दाखेरि चाहिँ कसरी ट्विस्ट हुन्छ मलाई ठ्याक्कै थाहा छैन, किनभने it could be हाम्रो पोलिसीमा अब जस्तै we talked about it several episodes ago. I think that conflict of interest को laws रहेन रहेछ. If you have a business interest and you're also an elected official, You don't necessarily have to let go of what you own, for example. त्यस्तो खालको कुराहरू रहेछ भनेर हामीले डिस्कस गरेका थियौँ. So I'm not sure how we look at discounts legally. But it just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense that they're... अनि सबभन्दा ठुलो कुरा चाहिँ they're willing to let this be on public record without any issues.
I think the problem here, like in Nepal, has become that shamelessly doing things and without any accountability. Okay? There is no backlash. There's nobody kind of raising eyebrows. It's just like happens and it's a everyday thing.
Yeah.
None of the mainstream media pick this up. It's just like Ukalo jasto independent sano publishers who are like putting these things out. And I'm pretty sure our unarko reader base is not as wide as any of the mainstream medias. And it's just like always just this amount of shamelessness that people, it's just blatantly out there. Everybody knows it's happening. People can clearly see what is happening. Tarapan, they still have to somehow just keep quiet, or they just
Exactly.
to keep quiet. Like, the government is the point of pugisagyo ki abo bhanera pani ke kam, it's come to a point where it's like यस्तै त हो नि.
Clearly
attitude
the company with known ownership बाट clearly एउटा politician को छोराको नाममा जग्गाको transaction भइरहेछ in a like and the value of the transaction stated in the official records is minuscule, and they thought it was perfectly okay to go ahead with. Either they thought nobody's going to write about this, which technically nobody did, or they thought that it doesn't matter. And considering the fact that this has been out there for a while and you don't really see this being talked about as much, that just proves their arrogance right. I know, maybe they're right to think that people are not going to care.
I feel like when you talk about it being the young democracy and the people who who bought this democracy in the picture are still in power, I think they're very smart about it. And so these kind of loopholes and laws is still into place because of the same reasons. Okay? Like the conflict of interest laws and all of these laws, there's so many loopholes. And until जबसम्म they are in power, these things are not gonna change. Like legally, like they know. अनि त्यही भएर पनि कस्तो अलिकति weird kind of a feeling, you know.
Yeah.
It's like even if you protest or even if you do this, legally they will get away with it.
Yeah.
Legally, on what basis are you gonna protest? Morally or like whatever, logically we know what's going on. So legally, what is it that you can do? They make the rules. They have been making the rules, you know. So yeah, I'm just happy that, not even happy, but I'm just hopeful that they're feeling the pressure, and feeling the pressure to change, and maybe slowly we'll have a more refined legal system. Which will get यस्तो सानो कुराहरू out of the picture. And I think त्यो हामी previous episode मा कुरा गरेको जुन चाहिँ थियो नि about violence or गरेपछि चाहिँ if they choose to become like a political party, त्यो पुरानो violence त्यो हो नि. I think त्यसको पनि अझै पनि कुराहरू भइरहेको छ पार्लिमेन्टमा. And now at least त्यस्तो कुराहरूमा चाहिँ मान्छेहरूले at least parliamentariansहरूले चाहिँ voices raise गरिरहेको छ. So, just being hopeful.
Exactly. All right. So, should we wrap up?
Yes. Let us wrap up this episode. Do you have any recommendations there?
Yes. So, this is a show. We spoke of young democracy, and we spoke of the issues that we're seeing as a young democracy. And especially, I ran into this show. Second season, it was trending a little bit. And this I decided to watch it. It's called Rocket Boys. So Rocket Boys is the story of, basically the first season, which I've watched, is the story of two guys, Homi Baba and Vikram Sarabhai, who were sort of the initiators of the space industry in India. And this is very old. This is a story from the story begins in pre-independence India. It begins in the 1940s, where one of them was still in Cambridge and the other one was just back from Cambridge because of the Second World War. Right? And the two of them crossed paths while working for C.V. Raman, the prominent physicist who also has a Nobel Prize. And they got more involved and they wanted to do something using nuclear energy. And one of them was involved in the first nuclear reactor that India had, and this was already in the late 50s, early 60s time. They already had a nuclear reactor. Right? They also launched the first rocket. Vikram Sarabhai was the head of what was then called INCOSPAR, Indian Committee on Space Research, and it's known as ISRO, which has been in the news for their moon mission on the South Pole. This is the first trip to land. Right? So we see all of these things. So the show basically takes you back 50 years where you see how these things started, and you see how it's individual effort and a decent level of political support, not an outrageous level of political support, and where India was very young and they had priorities. अनि मलाई इन्ट्रेस्टिङ लागेको रिजन चाहिँ नेपालमा ओभर द इयर्स कतिपल्ट यो सुन्या छ क्या, हामी पोलिटिकली नै स्टेबल भएको छैन होइन, हामी पोलिटिकली नै ग्रो हुन बाँकी छ, पोलिटिकली क्लियर आउट हुन बाँकी छ, इकोनोमिक्सको कुरा अनि त्यसपछि साइन्टिफिक रिसर्चको कुरा त पछि आउँछ भनेर होइन. इन्डिया वाज struggling politically throughout that period. I know 1947 when they had independence, and then following that the first sort of conflict with Pakistan, then the conflict with China, and then the conflict where Bangladesh became independent in the 70s to Indira Gandhi and the emergency and all of that. I know it's been turbulent throughout, but then you also see that they've also, to an extent, scientific research ma surudekhi they sort of invested some resources, and those resources are paying off now, where India's got, surprisingly funny thing to say, that they've got the most cost effective space program in the world. Haina ani त्यसपछि economics ko side बाट हेर्यो भने चाहिँ they had a big turbulent time until the 90s before Manmohan Singh ko finance minister bhako tenure, where they were able to sort of the liberalization phase, after which India grew exponentially and all of that. So it sort of tells you a story of how it's important to prioritize those things as well. Sure, you've got political issues, but then you can't let go. And it's an inspiring story. It's just a really fun watch. So yeah, highly recommend it.
I'll definitely give it a watch there. More the trailer is, and plus I love the actor.
Yeah, the actors are good.
Wait, I forgot his name.
Jim Sarb. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that guy is amazing. So yes, it'll be a pleasant watch. I've taken all your recommendations. Of it, just recommend so I'm like completely like, it's been all amazing. All right, so that is it for the 8th episode of Tinta Kura, and we'll catch you guys in the next couple of weeks. Until then, please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends about what we're doing if you like what we're doing, and that's it. Bye-bye.
Bye.